Hello, welcome to the March 3rd South Strabane Township Planning Commission regular meeting. First on the agenda is pledge to the flag. Pledge allegiance, sorry. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
the United
the
States,
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
under
with liberty and justice for all.
with liberty, justice for all.
Okay. Next item is public comment time. We allocate a period of time during this for individuals who would like the opportunity to address the planning commission on any matter regarding the township. We are having a public hearing on the Chapman Christian Center too, so if you want to save your comments until that'd be appropriate. Does anybody have any comments for the general public? Your name and address?
Judy Canasic, Green Crescent Drive. I just want to let you guys know that at the last supervisors meeting, they were advised by their council to allow residents to speak on this.
Right,
So I just want to let you guys know that.
yeah, we got that.
Okay, so I wasn't sure yet, so I just thought, you know. And if you have anything to say about Berry Road, it's now the time to say it, or, because I didn't know if you want people like jumping in while you're discussing it.
No, we can save, we'll have a discussion on that.
Okay, I'll just hold it.
Anybody else? Okay, not hearing anything. We'll go on to number 3 is consideration of the planning commission regular meeting minutes. Have we all reviewed that? Do we have any questions, corrections?
Yes,
No? You have any comments?
yeah, I've seen them.
Okay.
No, I think they're fine.
Okay, then I will look for a motion for approval.
So
Make a motion. Second? All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, that worked out well. The next is a public hearing for the continued consideration of conditional use application for Chapman Christian Center to operate a business or professional office located at 65 Fisher Road in the Zone C3 zoning district. We have anybody here representing the center? Name?
My name is Attorney Sarah Scott.
Okay. And anybody else? That it? Okay. All right. Well, we'll start the public hearing here, unless you want to give a little presentation here so we can catch up on what you are doing.
Sure. Would you like to go?
Whatever you like.
Do we want to have everybody sworn in? Who's gonna
Yeah, you
speak?
want to swear me in?
Well, yeah. Have to be sworn in there.
You can swear me in, I
Yeah.
might speak, just
Okay, state your name
Johnny Miller.
and your name. Sarah Scott.
But anybody who wants to speak in this matter, stand up and raise your right hand.
Say your name.
Judy Canasic.
Okay, do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So we are here tonight for a continued hearing from the last planning commission meeting for the Champion Christian Center. My clients are trying to apply for, have submitted a conditional use application and would like that to be considered this evening to operate a business and professional office located at 65 Fisher Road in a C3 zoning district. We were here at the last planning commission meeting in order to present said application. It was submitted on February 12th, and I believe you all should have information on it in your packets. But they would like to apply for a conditional use application in the C3 zoning district. So if you have any questions, myself and Ronnie can answer anything, but like I said, this was a continued hearing from the last planning commission meeting, so if you have any, additional questions, that's what we're here to answer, but
I think last meeting last month, there were questions on traffic, stormwater, oversight parking lot, more than what we needed. And you can fill us in on where we are.
so Yeah, if you want to come up here and speak to that.
Yeah, so if you, I could just address item by item. So again, traffic, we did confirm that the traffic study, traffic impact survey was completed per the township specs. I have it up here as well, 206, which is planning commission. So we did confirm with Transit Associates that they completed it per the township spec. Sorry, was there a?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so that's traffic. As far as stormwater, again, so we do have a secondary, a land development application, which is submitted already to the township, which is where we get into more of the traffic, into the stormwater. So that would be, it would also go to Washington County Conservation District for our NPDES, which is a federally mandated stormwater discharge permit. So that is the process. And we do have an initial round of review comments for the land application, land development application from the township engineer, which we are working through. KLH is obviously you guys know that, and they're working with our engineer, which is KD Engineers. So that's in process. Was there a third?
I think the parking lot is sort of oversized for what the proposal of the use of that
Yes, sir.
building was. And
So again, we did go back again to research throughout, the township's planning commission ordinances as far as parking. We know with 100% certainty that we are fully compliant with parking requirements for this property. We did find that after extensive research on our part as the owner's rep and also our counsel, which is Sweat and Associates, a minimal parking requirement. We were unable to find a maximum parking requirement. If anyone's aware of that, we would certainly revisit that. Our intention, though, would be that over the course of time, as this property produces cash flow to us and a bounty of tax revenue to the township, that we would definitely assume that that parking would continue to be expanded. So our assumption based on a C3 zoning versus say an A1 is that at some point in time, what's not stormwater or cash and revenue producing property that would produce tax income to the township would eventually be paid.
So if you're thinking of expanding, just so I get an understanding, right now you have 281 spaces in there. Are you expecting that to increase over time?
Ma'am, we have no further plans at this time, but we do reserve the right as private property owners, according to the township's zoning and ordinance regulations, to continue to develop that property in accordance and, with the C3 zoning. So currently there's no further plan, but I would venture to say, similar to what you see at Trinity Point or what you see at Tanger, that in the future that we will be pursuing additional phases that are 100% compliant. And again, I want to reiterate, as we said the first time, that our submission is 100% compliant. There are no variances. There is nothing in the entire submission that is not fully compliant and exceeding your requirements as a planning commission.
Well, I understand the points, okay, but we also have a concern with where it's located in Fisher Road, and that right now is your only access point in. And for something that size to be able to ingress and egress through Fisher Road is too massive. And we've also got to consider the residents that are living on that road and the safety of that road.
Are you offering, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you. Yeah.
And so you need to understand too, as we're looking at this, your traffic counts as the traffic study, if I'm understanding it correctly, it was based on a 30,000 square foot building. So they came up with average traffic counts that are counting 46 trips in the morning and 43 in the evening. Okay, so that's, to me, that's like, we'll go 50. Okay, I understand parking spaces are 150 because of the building size, but then you're jumping to 281. So those inconsistencies raise a lot of questions and red flags. And Fisher Road cannot handle that size. So we would have to go through Tanger, which means you actually would need to get a right of way to get access to the Tanger Boulevard, and you don't have that right of way. So there's a lot of concerns for down the road. And then my question with this many spaces,
Okay.
it's Champion Christian Center. I know it's Champion Enterprises. I noticed that they changed, which is probably, you needed to do that because otherwise you're through your nonprofit Champion Enterprises is not a nonprofit,
Correct.
correct? Okay, so if I'm reading your purchase agreements
Okay.
now, it is through Champion Enterprises.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Which we
My-
are on the record
When-
stating prior that that was the case, but go ahead.
No, that's fine. I have a question.
Okay.
Because of the size and the number of parking spaces, is it possible that in their vision to have a revival center up there?
Ma'am, at no time, that's your speculation. I don't know if that's the opinion of
No,
the
it's not,
planning commission.
it's just my question.
Okay,
You know, and I,
because what we presented is a compliant submission that states that a taxable entity is purchasing this, that is compliant with C3, which I don't write them, you don't write them. Our traffic study, which again, I'm happy to answer questions, but I'm starting to feel like you may have alternate agenda here.
excuse me? Oh my God.
I'm
Okay,
happy to
sir.
answer questions, but
Really, that's kind of, you shouldn't be
we've been
pointing
letter of the
fingers doing
law.
that.
We have an independent sealed engineered traffic impact survey that we presented that meets the criteria listed in your planning commission.
But as a planning commission, we also have to try to look at things for the future of the township and the safety of the residents. So that are where my questions, my agenda is the safety of the residents of this township,
Okay,
okay?
sure.
And the future condition of that road. So what you're proposing cannot run through Fisher Road.
What
And
we're
that is my
proposing
concern.
does
So that
comply.
means you're looking at conditions to place on this. So one of the conditions we may need to consider is how much traffic is permitted to ingress, how much traffic is permitted to exit onto Fisher Road or use Fisher Road. That's what I'm looking at.
Sure, yeah, and again, I want to reconfirm the traffic impact survey, which is sealed by a third-party traffic engineer, is compliant with the planning commission's.
And as was mentioned before, yes, we understand it's compliant, but there's some red flags and the inconsistencies in those numbers are the concern. But that's it. That's my questions. That's okay. We can move on.
Okay, I'm happy to answer further questions, do that if you have any.
Site distance in here. Also, it mentions site distance on driveway. If you're coming, you're sitting in the driveway and you're looking right, okay, that's what's coming up from Manifold Road. Okay, I notice the site distance is not acceptable. Am I reading this? And a vehicle approaching a left turning vehicle on Fisher Road from the rear, meaning coming from that way, is not acceptable.
So they have recommended that we move the entrance, and that has been completed.
So that's why the driveway entrance has been moved down the hill towards.
Yes, ma'am.
Correct. Okay, so
So that's compliant with the traffic impact survey that we have.
Let me ask you a question, because I know Paula, she wants some answers, and we understand you're 100% compliant.
Yes, sir.
So basically, our hands are tied if you're 100% compliant. Well, that's true to an extent, but would you entertain doing a traffic study on all the parking spaces with shadows, rather than just what's,
So
what you're
the,
proposing in this, well, I don't want to go off on a
No, yes, sir.
planning study, on traffic studies,
Mhm.
but, what you're planning on the square footage here
yes, sir.
is what your traffic study is based on.
Yes, sir.
Would you consider doing a traffic study on the proposed parking that you have? That's going to give you more of a long range.
Yeah,
Shorter.
I understand your perspective. Our position would be this, at some point, we fully intend that there will be a phase two. We're already in talks with surrounding property owners who were frankly here at the last meeting. Part of the reason I don't think they're here now is because we have a shared vision that we're moving forward, and I do believe it's in the best interest of not only the township, but its residents. That being said, should there be time for a phase two, we would have to come back to the planning commission and resubmit for a phase two application. At that time, that phase two application would require us to complete a complete second phase two civil engineering And included in that would be the phase 2 traffic engineering report. And our intention always is to fully comply. We have plenty of land up there that we can use within absolutely the means and bounds that are given to us by the township. So we intend to fully comply. We don't ever foresee the situation where we would need to come and ask for a variance. We don't ever foresee asking for a rezone. There's nothing in there that we think that we cannot work within the bounds of the C3. That being said, to your question, at the time when we would propose a phase 2, we would be bringing a full submittal back because these properties that we're using, this is an adaptive reuse. So when we go for building permit, we're essentially going to be using the properties that are there. Phase 2, there are no additional properties. So we understand completely that we would be coming in. And to your point, ma'am, there would at that time be additional observation and engineering need to be performed on Fisher Road. I agree. We didn't zone it. We're just purchasing the property and trying to comply with the zoning that's been given to us by the.
I don't want to interrupt. All right, so
Yes, sir.
you're saying at this time that there's no contemplation of expanding,
There are no plans at this time.
but now you're saying that there's an idea for a phase 2 of this?
To clarify, I said in the event when we would be presenting a phase 2, we would complete a new submission.
So if you would expand in the future,
No, I think that's just for the land development application. Well,
Okay.
because this is for the preliminary application as of right now.
okay,
Phase 2 would be the land development application,
Okay.
which would include the sewage planning module, the stormwater runoff ordinance.
okay,
And all of those aspects would be completed in phase 2 of the application.
okay,
But as of right now, we're just here as a preliminary conditional use and, just along those lines, just so you can better understand.
okay,
that
that's,
It's not for plans of expansion, it's to develop this current land that we have.
okay.
Yeah, that's correct. At this time, the 2 properties that are there, so there's a horse riding arena and a stable. Those properties will be adaptive reuse for the business office purpose.
Mhm.
In the future, obviously, that's gonna encompass a small portion of the 30 acres. If there were to be future plans for development, that's a complete separate submission application, which again would entail the full application, including obviously additional sewage, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Yes, it's things in the works for adjacent property owners. Correct?
I don't have anything to speak on that, ma'am. All I'm saying is that we are discussing basically how we can work together for the benefit of the township and for us. So, but there are no plans as so to speak of that currently.
Are there any intentions, I'm sorry, Jake. Are there any intentions to see about purchasing any right of ways to Tanger Boulevard for another access way in?
I would, again, this is venturing into speculation that's outside of this submission, but I would venture to say that in the future, the intent of all land holding parties in that C3 would love to see something that the township obviously has, final approval for that would probably entail that.
Part of the reason I'm asking this
Yes,
also is when Meadows Landing, and they were looking at their houses and that, we were not wanting them to go on to Fisher. They were able to go in because of their access to 19, and that was
Right.
their only access in. But they did have to show the potential for another access to Fisher, but they were not,
Yes, ma'am.
it's nothing to be used. So that, in a way, set a precedence that, to show that we were not wanting traffic going on the Fisher Road like that. So we need to be careful of that too, because if you're gonna be putting that amount of traffic on the road, that was already denied to somebody else. So
Yeah.
that's where my, also.
And I understand and hear that. I think the only current discussion that we have concrete plans that are frankly in writing on your desk are for the adaptive reuse of the 2 existing properties.
And just understand, when that was zoned to C3, that was zoned to C3 with the understand, the thought was that the container was going in and all that access, there was gonna be a separate roadway going, and all that traffic was on that separate roadway going, connecting the racetrack manifold.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's how that got rezoned that way. And
That would
was on-
certainly make our
That's not
property.
your point, that's my
Yeah.
third issue, but that's where our issue, our concerns come in, and that's where my agenda comes in to be able to.
Sure, yeah.
work with
And I didn't
somebody.
mean to be aggressive. I apologize if it felt that way. Obviously, the value of our property would be significantly increased should there be a road from Tanger to Manifold. So we certainly would be in favor of that. At this time, however, what we currently have submitted is the fully compliant phase 1 of 65 Fisher Road, which is the adaptive reuse for C3 business office.
Would there be any consideration with improving the road or lessening the parking spaces? As,
We have not currently entertained it. Obviously, this is the first time we're hearing of either of those two thought processes.
obviously, you can improve the road and keep a lot of parking spaces because it helps with the traffic, or you could lessen the number of parking spaces down to a lower number. And then obviously, if you want to expand later, you'll have to come back and ask to expand that. But
Sure.
I think that gives a middle ground. You're 150 is the requirement here. You're asking for 281. Maybe find something in the middle, 200,
Sure, yeah.
something substantially, not substantially, but
Yes, sir. Yeah. And I think, listen, we're not here to argue. We want the benefit and the best and highest use of this property, which is the best and highest use for the township and its residents.
yeah, no, of course.
I'm not in a position where I'm able to bargain at this current time,
No,
on behalf of, I'm a owner's rep, but, I can certainly take that to them and,
I think it's just an option worth considering for all parties
Yeah.
involved because, again, everybody wants to do what's in the benefit of the township.
absolutely.
So, we want you to be able to develop, we also want to keep the township safe. So that means improving the road or maybe dialing down on the parking spaces for now until, a later time. If you decide to expand, we do another traffic study, see how that amount of parking spaces affected Fisher Road,
Right.
and then see how that carries forward. I think it's just something worth maybe taking back.
Yeah,
To
and
your-
we'd love to see some eminent domain where you just make that, go from all the way down to Manifold, so.
Well, the problem, that's another problem.
I'm being sarcastic.
That's another problem, is Manifold,
Yeah,
the intersection of Manifold.
Mhm.
That's my big concern.
Our property does not touch Manifold,
No, it's a traffic.
and it does not.
It's a traffic will.
Yeah, and currently, obviously, the property that we are purchasing does not additionally touch Tanger. Unfortunately, we're landlocked. The only access that we have in and out of this property that is afforded to us at this current time is Fisher Road. And so that, is obviously driving that. And again, because phase 1, which is again, the phase that we have currently planned, it is landlocked and is an adaptive reuse. That's what's driving.
So you'd be willing to reduce the number of parking spaces? Say
I
150?
can't make that commitment, but I'm happy to take that to.
Well, that's not gonna do us any good tonight.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I wanted to ask a question about the parking space issue. I've heard numerous times here the applicant use the word 100% compliant or something of that nature. And the fact of the matter is that the supervisors under a conditional use have a right to put forward other conditions other than what's already in the book, as long as they are within the bounds of reason. So I don't know I don't know how how the supervisors would be restricted from putting a condition on there that to lower the amount of parking places. I understand the applicant saying that there's nothing in the code itself that limits the amount of parking spaces that can be built on the upper bound. But I would like to put forth the idea that I would ask the question, is it possible for the supervisors under our recommendation to add a condition that the amount of parking spaces be limited to X amount that is necessary for the operation of this first phase, as the applicant is calling it?
So,
Why can't we put that condition on?
because we only make recommendations.
Well, we
It's
can
up-
recommend-
Well, we have to
recommend
recommend
that.
We can recommend it. The supervisors have to put the condition on.
Right.
We can only
That's what I
recommend,
meant.
that's why.
The municipality's planning
Yeah.
code is what governs conditional uses. That's what tells us what, so obviously we have our conditional uses in the zoning code that says what can be done in a C3. Obviously, business and professional offices are a conditional use in a C3 zoning district, which means that as long as they meet all the conditions of the conditional use, they are allowed to put their business and professional offices in there. And now they are correct in that there is a minimum for the parking. There's not a maximum. They can technically put in as many parking spaces as they want. What it comes down to is, frankly, that the supervisors, you can recommend a condition, the supervisors can't consider putting, basically, a condition has to be reasonably related to enforcing the zoning ordinance. You can't impose unreasonable conditions on them, because if at the end of the day, we impose a condition, they can appeal it, and you're in a land use appeal, and then the court will make a decision on whether that condition is reasonable or not. So yes, we could say, for example, say the Board of Supervisors, we recommend that you put a cap of 200 spaces on their parking lot. The board can approve that condition. What they do in response to that is up to them. So just making you aware, that's how conditional uses work. We can only attach conditions which are reasonable in light of the MPC and the zoning ordinance. So, you can't place unreasonable conditions on that.
Right. Okay.
No,
And before we get in, you've reviewed all this township engineer. Right. So,
As a land development, I have not.
yeah, but what's submitted, they're 100% compliant. Is that correct? As Mr. Moore was saying.
We'll get to Judy.
That's correct. There's a lot of things that they still need to do with their land development. And it's not approved.
What, do you have any idea what is deficient?
Yeah, 5 pages.
Oh, yeah,
Can the conditional use be approved if the land development has deficiencies?
We're in possession of an email that confirms that, because we didn't want to do the same thing that happened last time. We thought last time we had a complete submission. The township, under section 206-35, is required to inform us if there's a deficiency. And last time we were not informed, and that's the only reason that we didn't meet. And so we just said, hey, listen, we'll take a contingency. This time we did reach out because we did not hear. So we did not hear, so we could make an assumption based on the township's regulations that we were compliant. But because we did not, we did reach out and we're in possession of an email confirming that our application is complete and is able to be approved.
And for conditional use approval, it would be complete, but for land development
Correct.
approval, that would be where we would have to
There are
do the additional step. And we would consider, and you all would have to consider conditions that we would have to place on the property. But at this current time, we're just asking for preliminary approval for the application as submitted, which again, does meet all of the conditions. I thoroughly studied the ordinance and the code and township's code. And at this time, for preliminary reasons, yes, we would. And then we would make every effort possible to meet the conditions in the future when it comes to land development. Just however, at this time, we are not there at that point. But like Mr. Miller stated, we plan on being compliant with absolutely every aspect of the township ordinance, along with any reasonable conditions that are placed upon this property. So at this current time, it's very preliminary. However, we need this approval to move forward in order to make this improvement for the property at that location.
And I just want to, so I have the application that was submitted and it lists the applicant as Champion Christian Center Incorporated. That would need to be amended because technically they're not the applicant. They're not the entity that owns the property anymore.
Sure.
It would now need to be amended. You'd have to submit a new application with the correct landowner now. So the actual landowner in this instance is Champion Center Enterprises or
Champion Christian. Center.
Champion Christian Enterprise. They would have to be the applicant now because now they are under the amended purchase agreement. They're now the landowner. So we don't want like this entity is not involved anymore. You have somebody else that's owning the property. So this would have to be amended to submit with the proper applicant name, which is obviously we can condition this upon you submitting a new
Sure.
amended
Yeah,
application.
That's what we would hope for, is that you would condition upon, I mean, we could get that in as soon as tomorrow.
Yeah,
In order to change that first page of the application, because you're correct, it is a taxable entity at this
Right.
point. Like I said, we can get that submitted as early as tomorrow to
Right.
show that Champion Christian Center Enterprises is the current property owner
right,
at that location. It's not a church property, it's a taxable entity.
right. I just wanted to point that out so you guys would be able to
Absolutely.
get that
Thank you.
rectified. Yep.
Do we have any other questions from the board?
Yeah, but I think Ms. Panasic had a question.
Well, we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to the
Oh,
public.
oh,
We're gonna get to the public. I'm just asking, do we have any other?
I just
Just
have
a-
a
just
quick
a
question. I was looking on the layout of the property, and there's an underground right of way for utilities. Do you know who is that for gas, electric, do you know?
I'm not aware. I do know that there is an easement.
Right.
And again, in our land use application, our civil engineer, that's a part of the actual package that he has. That's correct. So, yeah.
I believe, but is this on that property that we purchased?
Yeah.
But I'm like, is that the right of way that goes like up and up to the house?
There's a right of way that serves, I believe now or formerly the Falcone property.
That's what, yes, exactly, that, and I'm wondering, is this underground right of way, is that for the Falcone property, or is that?
I don't know that. I'm happy to find that out. And again, I know that's a part of the land use application. But I can certainly ask our civil engineer for confirmation.
It looks like it.
I remember one of the things that brought up is sewage. Because number one, where you have, EJ has capacity to take on the flows you're projecting there. And which way were you gonna get to this property, either from manifold or from Route 19 here?
Our civil engineer is in process on that. And we have actually requested as a, public right to know act, the sewer modules that were a part of the Bass Pro, which is who we obviously were able to acquire this from. So there were already former sewer modules that were submitted. I couldn't speak to the completeness of them, but we requested that and our civil engineers requested it. But at this time, based on his due diligence, he submitted service requests from all the major utilities. It's our understanding that there is access. Now, again, it may be long, it may be costly to us, but frankly, a lot of the lift in this for us is in the utilities. Obviously, the construction is largely existing, so the utility improvements are a big part of the improvement of the property. Which again, we do believe serves the township as well and the residents, because further up the hill, those utilities will be accessible. So.
And also the sewage planning module would be submitted with the land development application to depict exactly how the sewage will discharge from the property. And again, the engineer is working on this at this current time. We just don't have a paper document to present simply because we need this approval first in order to move forward with the full sewage planning module, stormwater, everything, as that part of the land development application. But it's definitely absolutely in the works right now.
Yeah, do we have any other questions? Board?
Question.
Brad,
I have a question, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
You don't have to think.
Okay, yeah.
For Scott, right?
Yes.
All right. Either of you can speak to it, it might be too preliminary, but you seem obviously prepared with what you have here today to speak in some detail. It looks like about 40% of that building is dedicated to a multi-purpose room. That be a rentable space as well on like an ad hoc kind of basis, or would you envision a long-term client in a room like that?
We believe, so our current, and again, you can speak to some of the conversations you were having about rental limits, et cetera, but the property would be available as a day-to-day. Currently in our current estimation, or long-term rental. And again, as presented in our prior presentation, we've used some of these other, whether it's in South Point or downtown, some of the other basically flex space offices as our concept.
Co-locating space.
Yes, sir. And again, you see in there, there's also a cafe area, which is pretty common in these. A large kind of foyer area, again, common in there and in our plan submission.
Appreciate that. Two
Yes,
other
sir.
questions related to the space, just out of curiosity more than anything. And again, it may be too preliminary at this point to answer these questions. So I understand from a rental rate kind of per square foot, just from a valuation and appraisal perspective. I know the property right now, as is valued at about $1.5 million. So all in, that's $27,000 a year in property taxes. So I know you've talked about, the revenue boom
Yes,
for the
sir.
township if this is built as you supposed. So just out of curiosity, just a back of the envelope kind of number, if you can, what do you think that office space is rentable for in today's market? I'm just curious.
So I do not currently, I'm not prepared to answer that question. I think it's certainly a well thought out question. I mean, my assumption would be if we were to pull rental rates from the general vicinity, it should be in line with that.
So commensurate with market.
Yes, sir.
rates.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
well said, yeah.
One other thing, just again, as an appraisal concept, evaluation concept, just to reconcile those two things against one another. If we don't have income and expense data, that's fine. Just an estimate as to what the construction costs of something like this would be every now and then for new construction. That's a fair indicator of value. So I'm just curious,
Sure.
off the top, again, a back of the envelope kind of number. If you submitted a building permit
Yes,
today,
sir.
what do you think that estimated cost would be?
Our estimated improvements for the two properties, so there's adaptive reuse. They're largely complete, but they're gonna be knit together with the foyer. Again, the purchasing entity is already, expending significant capital because we're confident that the plan that we have is compliant and we're moving as such, but not counting land development, because obviously some of those utility costs we're not able to forecast at this time. Our assumption, based on rules of thumb and square footage currently and what we're initially, proposing, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 to $2.5 million of improvements. That would be hard cost of capital for building improvements.
That's all I have. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Last time, the understanding was that some of the champion, their offices were going to go into that building also. But there was not, they did not know how many or anything like that. Are they still looking to have their offices go in? Have you gotten any updated information on that?
So we do believe, and again, these things can always change, but again, there's interest here. We haven't necessarily taken letters of intent because we don't feel that it's fair to potential clients to basically lock them into a proposed lease when we don't even have a preliminary approval. We do see interest, and again, the purchasing entity being related to the church does have an interest in relocating their offices, which are currently in North Strabane, to the township. I could not speak to the number of people that would be in the building, but I know that, if you were to take the building based on the C3 and the square footage, I think the 30,000 square foot is how the township derives.
But so Champion still is not sure how many employees they're going to be putting in that building yet, even though they're looking at.
I would say that's a correct assumption, ma'am. You're assuming and I'm assuming, I don't even know how many employees they have. I do know that, as any organization or entity would go through an expansion or a time of, contraction, that would vary. But I don't know that. I'm not able to speak to that. Yes, ma'am.
Joe, do you have any questions before I go to the public?
I had a question. I'm not sure if I want to ask it or not.
Well, make up your mind then.
Received some info. Okay, I'll ask the applicant this question. Is it the intent of the Champion Christian Church to build a school and church on that property in the future?
I'm not able to speak to that, sir. I'm not the applicant, I'm the owner's rep. What I know is related to the current submission and I believe our legal representative could probably say a similar comment, but
Correct.
my knowledge is owner's rep is limited to my current scope of work, and my current scope of work is this.
I believe at this time, the applicant's plan is to install what's addressed in the application, the multi-use office space, and that's the current plan, and that's what we're requesting approval on, is the current plan that was submitted to you all, meeting all of the ordinance requirements, meeting all of the, you know, if there would be reasonable conditions imposed. So at this current time, it's for the business park, and that's compliant with the conditional use of the township zoning ordinance. So I couldn't speak to future plans, but I know what the applicant is asking and requesting this board to approve tonight. And that's what's submitted in front of you today.
And I would also just note that the C3 zoning district doesn't allot for churches or schools.
Correct.
It's not in the zoning ordinance. It's not an authorized use. It's not a commercial, it's not a conditional use. It's not even a use by special exception. So they can build their offices there, but they can't build a church or a school there per our zoning ordinance.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Joe, is that it? Okay, anybody else? Okay, now we'll.
That's it.
Up to the public. If you have a comment or a question, please state your name and address for the record.
Judy Panassi, Green Crescent Drive. Sorry, I've been taking notes as this has been going on. First and foremost, I want to say I was highly offended for this board of what was said earlier. I've been coming to meetings since 2005. And I may not always agree with what you guys do, but I've never seen you do anything that wasn't in the best interest for this township and wasn't always ethical. And I really think that even questioning this board, especially from being at the last meeting, and there's a lot of change in what was said by the applicant and things that have changed. I'd also like to point out that they're all family, so the fact that a lot of these things are not known concerns me. This is a big family group with multiple churches that is now saying they don't know what their plans are in the future. The parking spaces being Muslims was talked about last time. It was talked about, it was brought up, so to say this time they were unaware of that, I think it should be noted that that was talked about at length at the last meeting, so they should have been aware of that. I guess they bought the property already?
They have an
No.
option to purchase.
Okay, because according to people who live up there, dirt's been being moved, things are being done, like this is a done deal already. I have pictures on my phone, people sending stuff to me. I just wanna say, you know, they submitted last year multiple times that they wanted to make churches allowed there. I do not think it is out of line for this board or the people in this community to question this about the future of what could happen, because they asked for it to be changed, the zoning on multiple things in the newspaper, everything, the public is well aware. It almost sounds like they're trying to build the church down in Peters. I've actually volunteered there, I can't afford it. What is it? Thank you, Bible Chapel. It almost sounds like a cafe, an auditorium, everything else. That's exactly what Bible Chapel is. Sorry. They can, and I did check into this. It was asked last time, Jay, you brought up about them signing something saying they wouldn't make it ever into a nonprofit. You can ask them to sign something saying that this in the future will be never turned over to be made a nonprofit. So that I would ask that you put that as something that would go.
I don't
forward.
believe we can.
I spoke to someone,
Well, we had an opinion.
Did you?
You
You can't?
can't,
Okay.
the tax exempt status of an entity or even being that is not something within the purview of the township.
Okay, so they can turn this into a nonprofit at any time.
They'd have to come back in if they go into the build anything else in that property.
Right, but they could also, as pointed out last time, let's say they say the rent, who they're renting it to is all nonprofits, they could do it that way as well, even if they're not changing it. If there's somebody brought up that if there was a percentage of properties renting off of them, they could try to make it a nonprofit.
I don't know about
It's just it's when you get to in the tax exempt status and nonprofit, for profit, you're talking, we can't control tax exempt status, we can't control
Right. I understand that, but that's what I'm saying, is my point is they can say whatever they want right now. And I have concerns because as some of you may know, this township's in trouble. We've got a fire department, a police department, we need to support them. This is one more thing, their pensions weren't even paid last year. This township's in trouble and this is prime property. And I don't know if there's any way to make sure that we make sure we get the money for this. And clearly they know the public's concerned and they wouldn't be changing things through this. My other question is the TIF. Was that ever looked into? Because I will state this, when the TIF was done, that land was blighted under 3 conditions. The third and final condition that blighted the property was that they attached this property, which touched Fisher Road, because Fisher Road was not wide enough, which has been brought up tonight. That was the third blighting factor in the TIF to make that a TIF. So tonight, if this gets approved and that is no longer part of the TIF property, how does that affect the TIF, if the TIF can even still be going on then? And I look to see how much we're getting from the TIF on the budget, it's not a lot of money. Like our 20% from Tanger is as much as that property is paying a year. Like that's how minimal how that's affected us. But that, I'm just saying, like, that's a huge thing. That TIF was I know, I won't bring up BP, but Bass Pro, sorry. Sorry, Fred, I didn't know what I was talking about. But that TIF was huge. That property was the key piece to be able to blight that road. And Fisher Road was not wide enough. And that's why that property was finally blighted. And that piece, that particular piece. Sorry, I'm trying to read my stuff. They brought up what their vision is, but they don't want to share it with us. That bothers me. Have they looked into the Native American aspect? That was brought up by Chapman last time. Like, there's all these other things that we're told that are supposed to be linked to by Chapman, but yet none of that's been discussed with all this. Sorry, I don't know why I wrote that. Okay. Sorry, I think that's it. There's one word I wrote, I don't know what I wrote, so sorry about that. Okay, and that's it, Jeff.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
Jeff Full, South Main Street.
What address on South Main Street?
1052.
1052.
I've been coming from this board for almost 20 years for various reasons, being a founding member of the Citizens Group Against Tax Income and Finance. I may not have agreed with this board on every issue for the last 20 years, but I can guarantee you one thing, and some of you folks have been here that long, and I've known a lot of you for many years. Every one of you look out for the best interest of this township. We never have not done that. We never have not done. I have questions about, we're turning Fisher Road into Berry Road. We devoted a lot of talk at the last several meetings about Berry Road, and Fisher Road is the same thing as Berry Road. It's the best shortcut in the world. I even learned that recently. If you want to avoid that intersection, you just cut up over there. And I have concerns with that. I mean, if they want to do what they want to do, not a problem with that. But they don't want property, and they need to contribute to the upgrade of the road. I mean, we sat here at meetings and we talk about then we didn't make other developers do that when they should have, in the case of Berry Road. Now we have an opportunity to get it right this time, and I think that's important. Have the sewage easements been? I mean, those numbers that were thrown around for the building costs. I'm gonna tell you one thing, I don't know, but in my opinion, your sewer is gonna be about at least 30% of that, if not more. And that's being conservative. Have the easements been bought? Has that all been done? And Fred, please don't throw anything at me. I know you promised not to the last time, but you threatened to. Bass Pro 2.0. This is classic bait and switch. And I hate to say that. This development's not quite ready to be done. It's not quite ready. Does it need done? Yes. Does it need done with all the property owners contributing to a good order? Yes. And I appreciate what they want to do, but aren't there any other shovel-ready properties in this, within a 10-mile radius of this site that have the sewers, have the roads, have the infrastructure in place? Why does it have to be here? I'm missing something here. I'm missing something here, and I think that's important. What Judy said was right. It was brought out last month's township meeting. The pension funds weren't paid. The American Rescue money was used to balance the budget, and a lot of things weren't paid. This township is in financial distress. There's just no two ways about it. There's no other way to put it, out of the supervisor's mouth. That we have a problem. And having nonprofit properties not gonna fix the problem. The taxpayers having to fix Fisher Road because we didn't do our job at this point of the game is not going to fix that problem. Again, not against the church, you know. But I'll tell you one thing, I don't know that God cares where you go to see volunteers. Thank you very much.
Quick question, Jeff bringing up the Fisher Road and Barry fixing it. We make the gas roll companies go in and fix the roads before they go in. If they're planning 281 spaces, that's way more traffic than 46 people a day, and they can't give us a number. How can you approve something if you don't know that they should have been made to improve that road before they come, because that would create significant traffic on it. And that's the question.
Let me say a few things, and I usually don't voice a personal opinion because it's really not right, and I don't count any more than any other resident of South Strabane. But number one, as a registered civil engineer, I really do think Fisher Road is better than Berry Road by a long shot. It's also better even than Manifold. That's the first. I drove back and forth over this thing and hiked up on this property and everything else. Really, Fisher Road is not as bad as it's being portrayed. It is an old road. It has been widened. The gas companies do it because they can't get the size of equipment, the weight of their equipment in. If they could, they would not pave it. But they can't really do it and keep the road on and bring the equipment they have to bring in without upgrading that road. And you're not going to have that kind of equipment going into this development. The sewage, I don't know where we stand with sewage. I bring it up because that is short-stopped some projects that were moving forward. And lastly, the township is really, they need the tax money. And the township has really eliminated a lot of commercial property over the last 5 years, 10 years. I mean, I've been on the board 20 years, and we've rezoned stuff residential. Route 19 had residential along there, commercial, all the way up past the Speedway and all the way down towards Dairy Queen, all that is Burkett Manor. It was all zoned commercial, and now it's all residential. And I don't think the township, they need some commercial development, and they've really changed the zoning to eliminate a lot of commercial development. As far as this development, the only condition I would recommend is that the Board of Supervisors consider reducing the parking down to 200 spaces. If they need to make it more, they come in with a space to them, and we'll address the problem. It has met everything. They've met the stormwater requirements. We've been hung up on stormwater, and that's an ongoing issue. The township is going to have to start making people pay stormwater taxes. So that would be my only recommendation about this petition.
Any other comments if people been sworn in from the?
Yeah, but I didn't check it out.
Yeah, you'd have to be sworn in, right?
But if I could do that, I just have a couple of questions. I had no interest.
Can you swear her in?
State your full name.
Marie VIPKO, Berry Road.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help
I
you
do.
God?
I just have a couple of questions.
Lady, it's hard to hear with the mask on. You can stand up maybe and project it a little bit more.
When the gentleman was speaking, I was surprised that there were so many parking spaces and who was there for parking spaces in Classroom, okay? And we just went extra parking spaces. But then later on, he said, we are considering a phase 2. And we are already speaking to people, and then the lady jumps in and says, phase 2 is when we come for our land development. But that's not what he was talking about. He was talking about expanding the property. So that rang a really loud bell in my ear, and it concerned me. And like I said, I have no interest in this, but I have an interest now. It just made me feel uncomfortable. And then I'm like, that the traffic study was done for the initial phase, okay? But they're planning more. Let us know that, but then look at that, and she corrected him. But he let it loose. He is planning more. That's what they said. It's all, I just want that on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Do we have any exhibits?
That's, I say, do we have any, were there any exhibits that you wanted to put into the record?
I don't believe any additional exhibits at this time, just the ones in the previous hearing.
In the previous hearing?
Correct.
Okay.
Mike, typically we have the entire packet there as
Entire exhibits,
so
okay.
we should just, if you could just read off what we do have, what was
Yep.
presented.
One second. So. Just mine. So we'll make this exhibit
It
1.
was already exhibit 1 and A, so I made move on to B here.
B, okay. So we'll make this exhibit B. This is the, from KLH Engineers, application for land development approval, preliminary approval review for Champion Christian Center. Okay, we'll put, no, it's just, I was gonna say, this is already in. Okay, then the only other thing was,
Well, there's stuff.
I don't see this now. Okay,
Is the land development plan, are those, that exhibit, those weren't in the original?
those were gonna be, okay, and then we will make exhibit C, the staff memo. And then we will make the land use plans exhibit D. And then we will make the post-construction stormwater management plan exhibit E. And we'll make the floor plans for the development letter F or G, F.
Is that it?
That is it.
Then we need a motion. Traffic study?
That's already.
That's already in
That
the
was
record.
added at the last year.
Yes.
Exhibit 1, at traffic.
Yeah, that was.
Yes, that was exhibit 1 in the
Okay.
last.
Then I need to, somebody make a motion to vote to enter the exhibits in the public record.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Enter this exhibit.
All those in favor? Next, make a motion to vote to close or continue the public hearing.
Do you have the right application? You said earlier you didn't have the right application. Right application.
Well,
We'll make that it'll be a condition of approval that they submit an amended application with the correct applicant on it.
I can get that too.
I'll make sure we get that tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah, I will get that to you tomorrow, absolutely.
It's gonna be from Champion Christian Center to just Champion Center.
Center Enterprises,
Champion.
just the change. One word change.
So I would recommend for the motion to be a motion to recommend approval with conditions that, one, they submit a revised application with the correct applicant name on it. I would recommend that this be submitted to the board with them to consider a reduction in parking spots or consideration for improvements to be made to Fisher Road. And I would also note.
Just to close the public hearing?
Huh?
Just to close the public?
Oh, no, I
Okay,
thought
you're-
we already had that.
No, we haven't done that.
Oh, well then, yes, go ahead and, my apologies. I thought that.
No, we're jumping ahead. I'm going, okay. Then I'll look for a motion to vote to close or continue the public hearing.
I think we discussed everything we wanted to discuss with this, so I make a motion. to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, fine.
Aye.
Close. Thank you, Joe. All right. Since there's nothing else required other than what you've mentioned.
Correct. Well, for the motion for recommendation for approval,
Yes.
the only other thing I would say is that it also indicates that, that the conditional use is being granted for the limited purpose of business or professional offices and no activities beyond that, and that the township retains jurisdiction over that matter. So those three things I can repeat if you
And the
need.
change of
The change of-
ownership and parking,
and either the
reduced parking.
reduced parking or consideration for approval to improvements to Fisher Road.
Okay.
When improvements to Fisher Road.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's vague.
So that will be,
Is it gonna get a line down the middle? Is it?
Because it's.
that will need to be something that will need to be negotiated, and that will come as part of negotiating, I'm assuming, findings of facts and conclusions of law as part of all of this. That will be up for the Board of Supervisors and the developer to negotiate exactly what I don't want to put a set improvement, like I would rather leave it
Up there.
up.
Do we need to specify improvements to Fisher Road to be negotiated and discussed between the board of super? Like, do we have to put that wording in there or?
I would recommend, just so that you know, because obviously the contention was either reducing the number of parking spaces or seeing that there's discussion regarding improving Fisher Road. Obviously, one's more easy than the other, but if you want to discuss if you want the board to consider negotiating with them to make improvements in the road, you should recommend to them that they discuss that with the developer. You could say and or, so they consider reducing the parking spaces and or.
That's both. You get and or, it's either.
It's either or.
Well, in that case, then I'm look for a motion to approve with conditions or deny the applicant's request.
I'll make a motion to move for conditional use of the Champion Center Enterprises, Champion Christian Center, for the plans before us, and with the condition to reduce the parking to 200 spaces and to consider negotiations with the developer for improvements to Fisher Road of an undetermined nature at this time. And
Submission of the revised application.
yeah, and the revised application under the new name.
Is there one?
I have a question. I have a question on the motion.
Sure.
Is it appropriate at this point? Fred, do you want it, include a specific number for the the amount of parking spaces?
Yeah, reduce to 200.
Reduce to 200.
Yeah, but that's what I was saying. Do you want to do that or just say yeah, I understand that, but I'm just questioning whether or not you want to make it a specific number at this time, or to just say reduce the number of parking spaces.
No, I want to reduce it from 281.
To an appropriate number, to another
I don't
number.
care what it's-
This is a question. If that's your motion, that's fine.
But 200 is what I
Okay.
request.
So the other one was to the conditional uses being granted for the limited purpose of business or professional offices and no activities beyond that, and that the township retains jurisdiction over this matter. So those were the three things: the application, the condition for the road and the parking spaces, and the limited purpose of the conditional use.
Did you, Fred? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I don't know if we need to mention it because you can't have a church in this zoning. That's like a foregone conclusion.
It
You know,
covers this.
Yeah, the zoning covers it already, but if you wanted it, that's fine.
Okay.
Do we have a second? I'll second that motion. All those in favor? Aye. All those
You want to
opposed?
roll call vote?
Maybe do a roll call vote.
Roll call vote then. All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Fred, aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
I go by name. I would do each
Yeah.
individual. Do each individual.
All right. We will do that. Okay. All those in favor? Let's see. Jay Gordon, aye. Brad?
No.
No. Joe?
No.
No. Paula?
No.
Brad?
Yes.
Dan? No. The motion is not. All right. Next item on the agenda is new discussion, potential improvements to Berry Road.
I'm not, it's a ordinance, right?
Here, the exhibits. I did. Exhibit B, I had to stick it, that's my fault. I got it. So exhibit B, that's the engineer. Exhibit C, the staff agenda. Exhibit D, the land use plan. Exhibit E, the stormwater management plan. And F is the floor plans.
Jim's gonna tell us.
You done? Good.
All right. So as you guys are certainly aware, Ferry Road's been a major concern for us for the past.
Do we need to do the spot first? Berry Road, or do we need any engineers? comment?
No, it's just discussion on questions.
Yeah, Scott, we don't need you anymore.
We'll listen to the rest of you, Jim, and then we're gonna tell us.
Man, that was quite the curtain call if I've ever heard one.
Grab yourself some rice-a-roni on the way out.
You're on free time, good.
Hey, Jay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right, as we talked at length, due to Menards coming in and Freedom Transit purchasing that property, the Tower Golf property there, that's reinvigorated our concerns, longstanding concerns over Berry Road. So the Planning Commission, as part of the Freedom Transit and the Menards approvals, requested that they receive authorization from the board to work with staff to come up with some ideas for improvements we can make to improve safety on the road. subsequently directed us to do that. We've had some internal discussions and we're going to bring you our preliminary findings from our discussions here today. We've had these discussions have involved myself, Brandon, Jordan, our fire chief, Drew, police chief, public works director, Russ Grego, who could not make it tonight, and township engineer, Rob Corvette. So what our crash data showed, no surprise really, the area of concern is the area of Berry Road from Manifold down to the old mill development. For reference, that's the Menards property where they're going right here. So the reason that's a concern is the weird Y intersection on Manifold Road and the old mill development. Dangerous road curves where I've noted them. I already mentioned the unusual and confusing Y intersection. And steep grade causes difficulty in controlling that speed. I know it's only supposed to be 25 there, but it's very difficult to maintain that. We've discussed a few options in terms of recommendations. It's been floated the idea of installing guardrails at the curves. For various reasons, Public Works Director Grego does not recommend that.
Why does he recommend?
What's his reason?
It mostly has to do with the amount of, there's actually a large amount of work that needs to be done in terms of grading and like earth movement, and he would probably have to get an easements and stuff, and they would just, and he has concerns also that the guardrails would not actually prevent cars from crashing through fields, but would actually could make things worse if they're going at fast enough speed. Discussion's also been made to make the section one way. However, the concerns from that one stem from the fact that people can still come down Manifold. Given the speed and the narrowness of the road, it would actually make it, there's concerns it could actually make it more dangerous to lead to head-on collisions. The one that we are in favor of through our discussions is actually close traffic at that X where I have marked there just by the old mill intersection. And
Leave it closed.
I have provided a handout that shows you Russ kind of put something together to propose what we would do. Cul-de-sacs would be built so that people could turn around in case they do kind of go down the wrong way. There would be looks like there's 5 Class 4 reflective posts that would allow this area to still be used for emergency access by our fire and police departments. But it would be quite obvious to anyone coming through that you aren't supposed to go there. You need to either turn around if you're coming from Manifold or go through Old Mill to leave. There's a number of proposed stop signs involved in this. And Russ has also provided a diagram of putting big no outlet signs at 3 locations on the Y intersection of Manifold Road. Through our conversations internally, this is our preferred option. We have even heard from residents, especially along that area, that they're in favor of closing it. I know. But before we get back to that, I do want to quickly go through some thoughts on where the transit authority property is going to be. Our thoughts involve widening the roadway at that location, making a left turn lane only into the property, and possibly seeing if we can get a stoplight placed there to kind of better control traffic. That would be going into that giant eagle over there. And I know the transit authority's already said all their buses will either be turning right out or going through giant eagles.
They're not doing it now.
Sorry?
They're not doing it now. They're using Berry Road now.
Yeah, but when the transit
I
authority.
know, I'm saying they're using Berry Road now.
Okay,
Because I took a picture of one going up there.
all right.
What's my understanding
So-
of the transit authority thing is finally built, they're not gonna use Berry Road. They're gonna go straight past Target and down.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're gonna go through there. So that's just a quick overview of what we've discussed internally, and I have Jordan Kramer and Drew Help were nice enough to join us tonight to act as a resource if you have any questions regarding emergency access or safety concerns regarding the road, and if you have any, and we're just here to kind of help facilitate a discussion, and we'd like to either have a recommendation to bring to the board generated, or we'd like to receive direction, and for, if you don't want a recommendation to go to the board yet, please provide us direction on further areas to research.
There room to put a cul-de-sac at the end so people can turn around after they don't believe the signs and say it's.
Yeah, Russ is quite confident in that he can do that. He's already received a price, budget estimate from our engineers.
How many accidents or substantial accidents that are reported with the police department occurred within, on a yearly basis there?
Drew, can you speak to that?
Do you have an idea there?
About 10-year numbers for this, and I didn't differentiate substantial to crash,
Yeah.
but the reportable number is significantly lower, but the amount of crashes is 80 in 10 years. And compare that to, so it was 81, Manifold Road, comparison was 78, Fisher was 5, I think. Locust Avenue, about 130, 140, I can look at the number in my mind, but about that. Cameron around 30, Lakeview 40, so just a rough idea relative to some other similar roads. The bulk of the crashes do occur down there. You know, extended summary, when you read through them, there are many references to any place you see a turn, bend, fence, pole, tree, it's this area. That's where they occur. Some do occur on the other end, but not as many as this side.
There's a lot of obstacles there with it.
Sorry?
There's a lot of obstacles there they have a chance to run it. I see there was somebody hit a tree down by toward Manifold the other day.
Yes, one vehicle crash,
Yeah.
intoxicated driver, DUI arrest.
Challenge.
Sober.
Challenge.
I think it was like 0.2.
I got stuck.
I brought it to the media, 0.5.
That was something like this. It was 3 times.
Wow.
Ask a question. Chief Hill, Chief Kramer, you're comfortable with the idea of closing the road and still being able to provide emergency services to the township, correct?
I am comfortable with that. There are numerous means of ingress and egress to any area.
Thank you, sir.
Jordan, why don't you provide a bit of a description on what those collapsible posts we have
Sure.
proposed?
You know, prior to that, in the 11 months or so that I've been here, at least 4 of the accidents resulted in 1 or more patients being transported to hospital. One of the other concerns on that road is when we stop to help someone, we've had, again, just 11 months, we've had multiple close calls with our personnel being hit because of people flying around the fence. So that road specifically is very, very concerning to me and having our personnel on it. The collapsible posts or the drive over barriers are what you would see on most trail access or entry roads. So when you're operating at a slow rate of speed, you're able to drive over them so that police, fire, EMS can still be able to access that area if needed. Especially if we have a prolonged incident where 19 might be shut down or we have a vehicle accident there and we're trying to get to other areas of the township, we would still have access to that road, or if we need to get to any of the farming areas, we can still take the quickest route.
What about speed bumps down through there? Before they get to those?
Before they arrive to that area, I think that is called out. The speed bumps aren't specifically, but I know that they've called out installing a number of areas of signage to let people know that you won't be able to go further. Yeah.
I did bring up one.
Jay, if I could speak to that briefly, you know, we generally subscribe to following, excuse me, recommendations of PennDOT and the Federal Highway Commission. We get those through the manual for uniform traffic control devices, and PennDOT subscribes to that. It tells you kind of recommendations what you should and shouldn't do with traffic control devices. Speed bumps are generally not recommended by those manuals, and stop signs for the purpose of speed control are not authorized by those publications. There are some, you know, some exceptions for public safety things, you know, so they're not hard rules, but they are the recommendations from the federal government and from the regulations that PennDOT subscribes to those and adds to them as well.
Okay.
Two quick questions that I think I could see on there, George. Those, and you brought this up and it just made me think is, you weren't around, this was several years ago, but we've had things where like the highway shuts down, and the traffic gets rerouted. Those could be taken out if something happened at 19, like that we had to reroute people up that way, correct? Like those things could be easily, I'm just asking, I mean, I want this to happen, but, you know, I was just curious if they could be.
Not necessarily easily. I mean, if we were facing some type of extreme emergency or natural disaster, we could remove them if we
Okay.
really had
I'm
to.
just curious about that. And I actually, I was just jokingly saying, like, I don't know why we can't put a crosswalk up there for at least the people that live there to get out, because if WJ can put it in the middle of Bow Street, why can't we put anything down on Fisher, or not Fisher?
WJ is never authorized. Those are only legal.
I know that, because I don't mind if I get a kid there, but.
Because they wanted to, and then blinking yield sign, it's all unauthorized by the state highway. Patrol.
I understand, I was just trying to be funny, but if they could do it, why couldn't we put that down there?
And I'm not in favor of, like I mentioned, Jim, a traffic light on Berry Road to the entrance into the Giant Eagle operation.
Yeah.
I'm not for that. Okay. We've got traffic lights up the wazoo. You know, when I moved here, I could drive out to the side of the village and not hit a traffic light. And, you know, then they say, why is there so much traffic? Well, if you got a damn traffic light every quarter mile, and it's true. I mean, I don't think Berry Road warrants a signalized interchange. So, and I do agree with the chief too. You know, speed bumps on the national highway manual are not recommended, nor are they signs of speed bumps. The whole point is to move traffic, not stop traffic. So, yeah, that's something like I'm in favor.
But you have an issue of speeding. You have an issue of speeding.
Well, this might doing a lot of work go wrong. Because, you know, they've lowered the speed limit on Route 19 from 55 to 50 to 45 to 40. And at some point, you know, people drive at a natural speed. That's a known fact. There's been a lot of studies on it. We could say, let's put the speed limit on Route 19, 15 miles an hour. Let's go back to stagecoach. It's still not gonna stop people from driving 60 on Route 19.
Well, that's how it is on Berry. I think it's 25. And they
Yeah.
go back to the-
Barry, they come down the hill like a roller coaster, you know. The trouble with Berry Road too is there's no shoulders,
Right.
none.
Well,
You
Berry-
have hedges there, but they won't stop the car.
Berry
If you
Road-
drive off the road, you're off.
Berry Road is not a standard size road. The
No.
lanes are
There's
smaller, they do not have the right of way for the
Yeah.
amount of
Nothing
traffic
standard.
that's going out. So if somebody's coming at you head on, there's no place for you to go, no place. You're going to get hit. And that's just how it is. But the transportation, people, they said their buses would go to Locust Avenue and Giant Eagle, but they have over 100 vans, and their vans will go any direction they want to. They're not controlling that. So you know that.
I had a discussion with my neighbor and friend down here the other day. He made a suggestion, when you go out of the development, you have to turn left. We don't have to do anything but make everybody turn left. I thought we did that at one time. I don't know.
There wasn't no right turn sign there at one time.
Yeah, and you know, if we would put that and enforce it, that would be a very inexpensive solution that could be initiated at the next meeting, the process started with the supervisor. And it takes care of all the traffic to the signalized Berry Road. The majority of it, once you get past the Giant Eagle, that is a better road. And it takes everybody to Berry Road where they can turn right on Locust and go get on the interstate that way. It's not that much of an inconvenience. If the police gotta do what they gotta do, they have access without running over anything to do it. I'm in favor of trying
incrementally.
Incrementally until we figure it out and get it right. I mean, everything's right I wish somebody would share that memo with East Washington about the speed bumps. I don't think they got that. But,
They put those in illegal.
yeah, but I think
knew the
there's,
mayor, unfortunately.
the board mentioned $150,000 some traffic study, I believe, don't quote me on that. And really, we can get this right on our own. We just have to keep ratcheting down the pressure until everybody understands the solution.
I'm not really in favor of closing Berry Road. I mean, that's a convenient access for a lot of people, and we don't know what the businesses, I mean, the last meeting, we don't know what the businesses will have opposition, not Home Goods, but Hobby Lobby, some of those places may take opposition to the township closing Berry Road.
If you remember correctly, Menards didn't care.
Yeah,
Menards didn't care.
Because all their deliveries are coming.
Yeah, they didn't care. They could care less about Berry Road or anything.
Yeah.
Most of the businesses do not depend on their road, and they will tell you that. Most of their business comes from Route 19. And I will tell you, most of the people that take Berry Road are through traffic. They're not going anywhere. They are going from Manifold to Locust, or from Locust to Manifold. It's not just local people that are using that road. And I understand you don't want to post, you don't like to stop lights and stop signs and all that stuff. And you have to go. But that traffic can be redirected to Locust Avenue or Route 19, and everyone except the zip codes can get anywhere they want to go.
If I could also just mention something, while we were doing our internal discussions, we actually Googled like coming from Canonsburg to Coles, and it takes you down Berry Road. I can't imagine how many people are coming down or coming from outside the area and using Berry Road.
The
to come
GPS
through.
is telling people to use Berry Road.
You have a interstate, put in the exit. Excuse me, Susan D. Lost, Lombard Circle, across the street. I was right behind Sam's Club. That's not a problem. I moved there after it was built. But I can't imagine why Manifold Road, which I understand is a state road, was not improved when the interchange was put in down there.
That was supposed to, in fact, the state owns some property, they bought some property along there.
And I think we should be pursuing the state heavily to improve Manifold Road. That way, some of these problems will go away. We need to have better access. They put in an interchange down there.
Yeah.
My goodness, that was to be used.
Exactly. No,
So why Manifold is still falling apart, the fix they made last year or the year before, in 2 years, that's gonna be down the hillside again. You're an engineer, you know that.
Well, we talked to, I talked to Mr. Stanek, the township manager, and said, listen, I want to know why they are not doing anything to Manifold Road. You put a full four-way interchange on the interstate. You've encouraged people now to go this way, and you haven't done anything. That road needs upgraded from the interstate all the way to Route 19.
Right.
It needs drainage, it needs reprofiled.
It needs widened.
Yeah.
It
And
needs
so,
turn lane.
but PennDOT's answer is it's on a long-range plan.
Will always vary.
I don't see our long range plan right
The
now.
Tanger development, when they put that in,
Yeah.
they did
Longer
a
than
traffic study from their planned outlet from Tanger to Locust Avenue. They did not do a traffic study for the rest of Manifold Road. Now, everyone in this room knows that everyone is going to use Manifold Road.
Yeah.
And they said they were putting that entrance and exit to 79 absolutely for the sole purpose of Tanger.
And
Tanger
as
never
much as I
made a
say, I'm not
road
gonna
that
say
made
it, is Bass Pro. Bass Pro even sold PennDOT that they were gonna be. So they partly wanted-
They lied.
They got a four-way.
Because that road was actually bankrupt when they were doing that.
Yeah.
And they only did it because they were paid to do it, okay? That's what happened. And then we all knew they weren't coming, yeah.
Well, I will say Tom Moore did try to get the board to
forced PennDOT to ask Bass Pro if they were coming to the cheaper interchange in, and the board supervisors would not vote for that. But Tom Moore did try to get them to get an answer on that. When they changed that to not make the right turn anymore, or to be allowed to make the right turn, even though it wasn't supposed to be there, that was done when Lainey was on vacation, so she couldn't come to the meeting. And there was an accident that had happened that and I wish, nothing against Juju, but I wish Zofchek were here, because I remember him being at the meeting and discussing an accident with a young lady who did something wrong, and then the parents were upset that something about turning, I don't know. But I think that, we've discussed how bad all of that is, and all of that's correct. If there's a way to stop, Jeff, you're saying not to turn out right there, but everybody can still turn right all the rest of the way up the road. So anybody.
Every exit from any
Right,
place
but
on
then
that road would be left to the signalized intersection at Berry and Locust, and then they can go get on the interstate. They have
And then
two choices.
that's fine, if you could cut it off, if you could put a barrier up right there so nobody can turn or come down that way. Because the other problem is, and I mean, I use Barry all the time, this is gonna devastate me, but I want what's best. But it's just killing me to go against what I like to do. But going off of Barry, we haven't discussed how dangerous, Ed Mazer sat on that board once, it was like, I'm gonna do his voice, but I don't want to be disrespectful, but he said, he goes, I get on, he would go to one side and not know if any cars were coming, and he would drive in the wrong lane until he knew he could get over to the right lane, and he didn't know if any cars were coming. Like, I mean, it's that bad, or even where you exit when you're, and people turning onto Berry Road, I've seen more cars that have bottomed out and been stuck, I mean, and the purpose is to save money and to be safe, and I mean, I think that's, like Jeff said, in increments, just chuck it one side down. Shut it down so nobody can use it.
Buy a cheap Band-Aid, buy a cheap Band-Aid.
I mean, I'm all for shutting it down completely, but if nobody wants to do that, at least cut off one half.
I really think that, before, I mean, this is just a spitballing session really on this, but I think the township should put a legal notice in the paper saying that they intend to close Berry Road off.
Yeah, we would
Probably
probably.
down to, it's public road, and so there should be some kind of a public notice that that's the intent right now.
Mhm.
And just to see,
What happens?
Yeah, see what happens, see if we have a whole room full of people that want it closed, or a whole room full of people that want to stay open.
Okay.
You have comment?
I have a question. So in these proposals, we're saying, we're gonna funnel everybody down Locust, then presumably they're gonna make a left on the Oak Spring Road. Have you been on Oak Spring Road lately?
They have to Jim too.
It's horrible, and it's narrow. Once upon a time, we had a viable mall there. A lot of people used that, Fillington, North Strabane Township, might go that way, instead of taking 19 or the interstate. That road's horrible. Is that a state road or?
Yeah.
Okay, we also need to get on the state about that.
We need a Berry scout.
We need somebody in this part of the world of Pennsylvania to make some friends with PennDOT.
I've said every chance, just the dangerous intersection with Cameron Road and Manifold Road, where, if you drive straight ahead, you drive head on into the
Right.
person.
That needs to be changed.
Why they have a right turn lane exclusively for right turns,
Right.
not
That should
right
go,
and
that should go
straight.
straight ahead.
The left lane is straight ahead.
Right, and that should be a
I've
turn
been,
right.
we've also had,
And why was that done, Fred?
they have never given me a name.
There's two initials, BP. That was done for that development. And they were too cheap to buy the jimmy joints, and the truck park's sitting there, it's sticking out in the road about 5 or 6 feet. And even more, I never will forget one of the police officers at the borough took me to get the truck at Rusty's one night, and he went through that intersection the wrong way, and I'm sitting there going, oh my God. And because it's the only one like it in the world.
I know.
And we need to take it upon ourselves to work with PennDOT to fix that. That's an easy fix.
And I think the township manager, and the township engineer have to sign a letter on the township letterhead demanding PennDOT do something with that. You know, what I mean, because we have even, Larry Lynn was here because they can't get from Manifold Road up into the Ford garage with their delivery trucks, okay? They hang up. So they were gonna put in a lane on the right-hand side, so, because right now they park right on Manifold Road and unload their vehicles, the new cars. So they were gonna put a lane over there on the right side, so the delivery truck could pull in and they wouldn't be blocking the road. And I thought everything was a good idea. We approved it. You know what? And I didn't approve it. So their answer is, okay, well, they're just gonna sit there right by the head-on intersection, and then they're gonna unload vehicles there too. I can't think of anything more safe than that.
Well, I've been down there and Jimmy John's got a truck there and they're loading there and Jimmy John's has a parked semi there unload.
I thought they were using their processing center to unload now.
They are, they don't use now. The proposal for closing here, was it close it completely in both lanes or just one lane?
It would be, we would have some collapsible barriers to allow, emergency access, emergency vehicle access, but, it would just,
An ambulance collapse those.
but then,
They're just a stick on the spring.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's.
Yeah.
I think the inconvenience, those are somebody on a call, I have a call. Whether it be a fire, police.
You can't be driving your station wagon.
The average person can't make
Maybe you just, you know, drive that.
All right, let's get back, hold on, folks. Hold on, we're getting carried away, everybody's talking at the same time. So where are we at now?
So is that, if we were to do the collapsible barriers
Mhm.
and put in the cul-de-sacs, that's the 6,180 is what the cost to the township would be?
those costs aren't accurate anymore. The engineer, Scott, you mentioned that Rob sent the, engineering estimate to us earlier today. Do you recall what that number was off the top of your head?
Or cul-de-sac.
About 10,000.
Go ahead, what you,
And, the engineering estimate was about 10,000.
okay.
For the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, we'd be able to go work in the house.
What's it made of?
That'd be asphalt.
Well, was it just,
What's the expense for two stop signs? What is the expense for these two stop signs?
What is the expense? I actually don't know off the top of my head.
They aren't that,
I'll be.
well, 15 signs and a post is 1,900.
I'm just saying, if you want a quick fix and maybe 6 months to try it out. At least between where the bridge is and where car park is, then people will get the idea, I have to stop there and I have to stop there. That would at least slow them down.
Yeah.
Right, so within our, where
It's
we
not
live, right, what they, that's not gonna accommodate coming down.
Well, it's just.
If it happens,
So I believe one of the reasons that cost is so low is because all of the materials from that already has, with the exception of the asphalt itself.
Oh, so they're using their inventory of supplies.
Correct, the millings, the fabric that goes down, all of that's on hand. The fabric was actually donated by somebody that paid for us years ago.
Okay.
So the real cost comes in the asphalt itself.
Is the road department, I mean, they're gonna do the grading and everything in the house too.
It seems to make sense to try that. I mean, because if there is a problem, they're collapsible barriers. It's not something like that's permanent. It could be changed if needed. Emergency vehicles can get through very easily if needed. I mean, it seems like.
Oh, they're a stick on a spring.
Well, that's what you just drive.
They just go down and snap back up, you know, then they make a little racket. That's
Fred,
all.
don't talk about it. We don't want people to know that.
Is it enough to deter people though from running over themselves?
Speaking from personal experience, I didn't even know those things collapsed until we started looking at pieces. So hopefully it'd be a deterrent.
So it'll be our secret in here then, is that?
They look
You would only,
stationary.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Fred's suggestion to put something publicly out to people so they're aware of it ahead of time.
See what
I think
happens.
It's a good idea, and to go ahead and install those collapsible ones. It only makes sense, because you know what? What it's gonna do, I would envision it's gonna force people to go to 19 if they're heading that way. Or if they're wanting, exactly, they're gonna go to the light at Locust, they're gonna make the right, and they're gonna, if they're leaving that way, they're going that direction. So,
So I have one more question.
Mhm.
If the township in its great wisdom, okay, made our property residential instead of agriculture, it's been agricultural for history, but it was during the gas drilling, and they were so afraid that when they went to drill on our property, that they named it R2, okay. So if someone, I'm old, I'm not gonna be here very long, and hopefully I won't get killed on Berry Road. If they develop our property into residential, what happens?
Yeah.
In
If they
theory,
close the road.
we can, that's why we were talking about doing these collapsible ones so that they can be removed. And hopefully if a developer is willing to actually develop that property, they're going to be interested in paying for the improvements to Berry Road themselves. And they would almost certainly be compelled to do that before.
I don't think they'd be interested in
So
doing it, but they.
in other words, the township in their great wisdom made us residential, okay? And now it's going to be more difficult to develop because whoever wants to develop it has to pay for their road, which has been a problem for us.
Well, that's their problem.
they'd have to pay for it anyway, because Berry Road couldn't handle that. I mean, it's like what we're running into down there on that Lakeview with that development.
I'm just asking.
Not-
I'm gonna present this to my family members and.
And keep in mind
We
that-
have all kinds of questions.
Keep in mind, Lainey, this is just a proposal and so
Right, I
nothing's
understand.
finalized. And
Oh, I.
as Fred suggested, if the planning commission does direct us to move forward with this plan, we will certainly have a public hearing or something to it.
Why don't we just move on then? I think we've covered. the
All right, well, is that a recommendation to move forward with this plan then?
Yeah, I'd say have like,
Because the
make
most
an actual
important thing is.
site plan,
Yeah.
Something
So
that
we can look at
we
it.
can look
Yeah.
at.
Okay, we'll bring it back to you and then maybe we'll have a public hearing
All right.
and discuss
Yeah.
that with Brandon
And
tomorrow.
then the people, public hearing can see what's being proposed.
All right.
All right,
All right, next.
so the next was the code amendment discussion on fences. There was valid concerns that the language was gonna require people to replace or maintain a fence to get a permit. I provided updated language that removes references to alterations. It's provided for you. If you'd like to review it now and direct me to include the language as given in the ordinance, you may do so, or you may review it and come back to me at a future meeting.
Let me ask you a question, Jim. The fences, is there a requirement as how close they can be to the property line?
They can be on the property line.
They can be on the property.
Yeah.
Is there a requirement that they're on the property?
Yeah.
I don't think that's.
I'll tell you why, because, sometimes people say, well, I don't want to be around my neighbor's property.
Yeah, I know
Let me
you,
move it back 4 feet. Well, then the neighbors start saying, well, I don't want to mow 4 feet of your grass. You still, you're gonna have to jump over the fence. And so a lot of townships say, within a foot of the property line. So they know.
I don't know off the top of my head what a requirement is, but that's something I could easily look up and get that answer to you. And we could make a fix on that if you'd like to.
Yeah, and I think also, although it would be an expense to the landowner and the registered surveyor, should establish the property line before the fence is put in. Because I've been involved in fences that are not on the property, they're on the neighbor's. So
Yeah.
that's something else to consider.
That's definitely a consideration. We'll look into that.
2 feet on each side.
Making a face ball.
Yeah.
I don't know what else you want to discuss.
I think it's good that they can maintain it without having to come get a permit, like they
Yeah.
replace a
Yeah.
section.
Well, that's it,
Replace the
yeah, so they're
section.
taking down the old fence and
Right.
replacing it with new.
Right.
And that's where, I'm just thinking for the near property lines, I mean, right away should like, utility lines shouldn't run through there or anything like that, they should be in the property. Cause that, I hate to, like, create a hardship for somebody that's trying to do something that.
So the proposal is they don't need a permit to maintain their fence.
Yeah, no, because that was the concern I heard the last time this was brought before you, that the language wasn't clear enough that you don't. I flat out, the language flat out referred to alterations, and that was a mistake that was included in the first place, so it needed to be removed. So we were clarifying that the language removes the need to get a fence permit whenever you're doing maintenance or replacing a fence where one is already located.
Right. I agree with that.
Yeah, I do too.
Some people let the fence dissolve away if they're gonna go get a permit.
Yeah, we don't want
Then they
that,
don't
so.
wanna do it. So they know they can fix it without.
Yeah.
paperwork.
One takeaway I have from tonight's meeting, and I want to thank everybody, whichever way you voted, if you did what you thought was right, that's okay. But one takeaway tonight is, we're always looking back and trying to fix things. Why don't we consider, especially with Fisher Road, that we ask the supervisors to get the engineer to say, hey, if we move forward on anything up there, this will be what is expected of you to use that property. And I know that there's a lot of things that can change, but at least we have a very minimum what will be expected and what they'll be expected to contribute to it. And in that way, you guys aren't put on the spot, but it's not fair to you guys. It's not fair.
I have a concern, or, right.
I was having fun.
You're off to a good start. I give you credit.
This is fun.
Thank you.
Jeff, you're making a point that I was concerned as this hearing was going on, because things are gonna come down the road, just like we ran into the stuff with Meadows Landing and all. If they were exiting, if there was some other exit way, we created the C3, and they have the right to use that C3. But it can't be used to its full capacity with Fisher Road. There has to be another roadway for that, and that was with the tent, that was supposed to be constructed. But we've got ourselves into a situation now like this. So how do we get ourselves?
Well, there's a curb cut though at the end of Tanger that probably lines up with
But
that property.
what happens though is they don't own that property. I think Imperator Falcone owns that
But
property.
did you hear what they said?
For
He
them.
said it tonight, he exposed it, he goes, eminent domain.
Well, when he, well,
And that's what they want to eminent domain, because the township now owns that road. And they wanna open all that up, and so he slipped and said it, that's what they're hoping happens.
I wonder if that, that's the question, because they don't have that access. They're landlocked in the back. But it's not in the township's best interest to allow all that traffic to disperse onto Fisher because of, like.
This isn't a hard
Understand that these traffic studies, there's a certain compounding of conservatism in these, and there is not, like Mr. Miller said, the traffic study shows there's not gonna be an impact in the Fisher Road. Now, that's, you might not believe it, but I'm telling you, we had this traffic study done on Washington years ago, The people sounded like, once it got built up, when the first developers went out of business, Miranda Homes finished that development, people were sounding like there's gonna be a line of cars like going in and out of Fisher Road, like every 2 minutes. Well, that doesn't happen. And I mean, you're not gonna have that on this development over there either. You're gonna have 5 or 10 cars every hour That's all you're gonna
Explain
have.
this then, on the traffic study, it says 42.
I can't explain traffic studies. Those guys throw buns on the floor and read them. That's why I
There's a wheel involved,
I have
too.
a problem. They can make it work any way you want.
Right.
Joe knows that. That's why he's laughing.
Well, that's, but with
Yep.
42, I'm not really worried about 42 trips, but I am worried about 150 trips or 200 trips.
I
That's
mean,
for that.
I
and
can
there's-
see-
They'd have to come back for approval.
I can see something like in that multi-purpose room, they use it for a wedding.
That's what I,
And you may
exactly.
have 100 cars show up all one time. You'll have a slug of cars, but over an hour, it doesn't amount. You might have a whole group and saying.
Or they can listen to somebody do a lecture series every Sunday.
Exactly, well, that's.
From 9 to 11.
They have an auditorium, that's.
And they have an auditorium.
That's-
All they need is chairs.
Yeah.
We beat this for.
Yes, let's go, sorry.
Can we move on?
One more comment. Ed Major, God bless him, he had a saying, it went back, when I first come around this township, what was it now? 70 something. Business proceeds at business's pace and at business's expense. And the sooner South Strabane gets back to that old adage, the financially better off we're going to be as a township.
But
They
you
want
know,
it, that's fine, they pay for it.
if we have a housing development, we make sure in case of an emergency that they have an entrance and another exit. How can we let someone develop this much property without having an entrance and an exit? I mean,
That's a great, there's one access, well,
Yeah.
actually, with that one access way in, actually, would you?
We, before they came to the board, we voiced that concern to them, so being able to have two access.
Okay, that answers that question.
Can we move on?
Yes.
Can we move on, folks?
I have a question.
Oh, geez, you had to be last, didn't you?
When Jay said about your suggestion about making it 200 spaces, can they make the spaces like a car and a half wide and put those lines on? No?
Why not?
They
Why
can
not?
They can make them any size
But
they
it would
want.
still be the same square footage for stormwater control, but they're saying that we made the car spaces extra wide. So we painted the lines, but it's really 280 spaces, but they made bigger, bigger
And they can
spaces.
come back and paint over it again when they went to
Yeah.
281.
And my second thought was, doesn't Tim O'Neill live in Washington Woods or?
He lives over on that, he lives in Cameron Estates.
Well, so maybe we should contact him about the cheating travesty at the end of Cameron Road where you have to go straight and turn and all that. But he lives right here.
He's having a meeting in March. I'm going to.
About what?
Yeah, I like to go there and annoy him. It's like, I tell him, usually at one, it says he drinks pizza, has like an hour and a half, 2 hour.
Yeah, town hall
session. Town hall meetings. I forget, I got an email on it. I
Anybody
forget.
see the dead horse in the corner of the room? Anybody see the dead horse in the corner of the room?
All right, moving on. Last item.
Staff update, it's been received, I have a few other items just to mention. Act 537 plan update, reminder, we're having that joint workshop meeting on Tuesday at the Oak Spring Fire Hall. That's a public meeting, please come if you were interested. Materials for that meeting are provided, it's that big binder in front of you, so just have a little light reading this weekend.
When is this coming Tuesday?
Next Tuesday, March
7
7.
7 o'clock.
At the fire hall?
Yep. The other thing was at Tuesday's meeting, the Board of Supervisors directed the Planning Commission to review the Saldo and zoning regulations regarding the requirements for sidewalks, trees, streetlights, recreation facilities, mailboxes, cul-de-sac sides, cartway widths, and planned residential development bulk regulations. Stay tuned for that. And the final thing is, this is my last meeting of the planning commission with South Strabane. I recently accepted the post of assistant planning director of Pierce Township,
Oh,
so.
congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure working with all of you. Presumably Brian will take over from here on out, at least until my successor gets installed. So it's been a pleasure working with all of you, but I'll still be here through March 24th, and I'll be at the meeting on Tuesday as well.
Okay. All right, if there's nothing else, I will like a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second, all those in favor?
Hey.
All right, we are adjourned.